Hi everyone, I'm Philip, an engineer living in the south of China, and I'm here to tell you the truth about this country.
Is China a living hell? Well, if you ask any Chinese
No,
person in China, they will tell you no, because it's all relative. But is living like Cloudy with a chance of meatballs, but instead of food, it's actually your ceiling falling, a great experience?
oh, in a country with 1.4 billion people, I don't know how many restaurants we have here in China. Oh, Jesus Christ, a ceiling was falling. Oh, that's the end of the world. This shows how China is bad, right? Because other countries don't have bad constructions, only China. Only happens here. This kind of things only happens in China. China bad.
Is living in a tofu track construction building a desirable outcome?
That's a typhoon. That image of the window was one of the strongest typhoons that hit China, but let's not mention, right?
It's constantly getting scammed from things like fusion meat, fake gold.
I'm sorry, but how do you know this is fake gold?
Fake wood-carrying girls.
Wow.
Fake homeless people.
Yeah, because homeless people cannot have iPhones, right? Cannot, or phones, actually, not even a phone. But homeless people are not allowed to have phones. I don't even know if this guy is just a beggar or a homeless. How does he know that? Wow, people faking, wow. This only happens in China, right? Wow.
Or restaurants where the
That was pretty fake. Even the guy running to the camera, that was pretty fake.
chef is peeing in the kitchen. Is that a great way to live?
Yeah, because that happens in every restaurant in China. Wow.
Or how about a domestically made electric car that doesn't deploy the airbag like this BYD car?
气囊没弹啊，只弹了气帘儿。好家伙嘞！顺便再看看它的做工用料，已经锈了，看到没有？已经锈了。我的天呐，你看这儿也是。
Yeah, it's rusted. Where is this area? Where does this car was living? There's no reference. There's no nothing. Oh yeah, it's rusted. Okay, but how old is this car? Was here in Yemen or was in Qingdao in the front of the ocean? Like,
已经锈了。
The point is, China, until you look at the fine details, you will see that it's a flawless country. China seems all right, and that's precisely what the government tried to do. And the Chinese people simply have to live with it. So
China has problems. As I said, I'm working in China. I've been working in a factory in China for over 5.5 years. And my colleagues say that China has problems. What are you talking about? There's no such a thing that, oh, everything is fine. Nobody says that.
what actually makes China bad, and how is it that I'm trying to say the same thing over and over again? Well,
Let's
for
see.
one, there's no accountability. The wrongdoings of the governments, the people simply just have to live with it because there's no inalienable and no God-given rights in China or
There's no God-given rights anywhere in the world.
under the CCP. There's no people's representatives. There's no
That's not true.
presidential elections every 4 years.
That's not true. That's not true. There is representatives in small areas. Anyone, the guys for my work, they have meetings every month to criticize the government. What he's saying is just bluntly lie. People are accountable in China. There is politicians fired all the time because they're doing a bad job.
There's no correction to the wrongdoings. And
That's not true.
course
That's not true. Since Xi Jinping was elected in 2012, more than 1 million employees of the government were arrested for or fired for corruption.
correcting halfway through the game. So simply things are just straight up bad until it goes completely wrong. Videos
not
like this where the child films on camera for his grandparents
Okay.
who have been harassed by a local village head for 2 years, bullied. Another child who
Okay, that's bad, but what happened? What was happening before? What happened after? He's just saying, oh, people were bullied and they're complaining on internet. Okay, and then what happened? That's the thing about those China haters. They bring some piece of information without context, and we cannot even check it.
reported for his grandparents' only house to be demolished, and they've been beaten by the township secretary and others. They promised the grandparents that they would build them a new one after demolishing the old one. And after that was done, well, they simply forgot what they said, and the promise was never kept.
Honestly, this doesn't happen in China because everything is in contract. You can find on YouTube nail houses China. Just look for nail houses in China. It's house that people didn't want to move and didn't accept the offer and made high around the houses or built, I don't know, malls around the houses. There's several of those. My factory is in the road and the avenue should reach our factory. But because of a few buildings, the owners that didn't accept the government offer to leave, they didn't accept the money the government wanted to pay, we don't have an avenue. The avenue ends on those buildings.
Leaving those grandparents homeless for about 10 years. These cases you'll find
This
them
is
in
bad,
any
yes.
country, but on a broad scale, there's no problem-solving situations involved where the cops are in bed with the government officials.
Yeah, because United States and my country, Brazil, this really works well, right? United States has the biggest homeless population ever, over 800,000 people. From those, 30% have jobs, but they don't make enough money to pay for a house. Hey, accountability, right?
They serve the government, or they're too busy filming, faking, helping the locals.
Oh,
And the thing is,
the government is making propaganda. I cannot believe on that. The Chinese government makes propaganda, really? As if United States government doesn't do it, right?
growing up in China sucks. This is 611.icu. It's a new campaign started online so Chinese parents and kids can go on to sign their schools up in one of these entries. So far, at the time of recording, there's about 1,700 plus schools in China, middle and high schools. What's happening is there's a 6-11 schedule for kids in China. They study from 6 a.m. till 11 p.m. at night, 6 to 7 days a week. Now, if you look at some of the entries, that averages to about 100 plus hours a week of studying.
Yes.
So this extreme level of torture, trying to get them to become test machines, has been driving a lot of kids into mental problems, depression, just in general, this hyper-competitiveness in China.
But this is not created by the Communist Party of China. This is the Chinese society since centuries. Doesn't mean it's right. I agree that it's not good for the kids. Over 100 hours studying, they don't play at all. So I understand, and I agree this is bad. But this is not created by the Communist Party of China. You understand that, right? Actually, now there's more schools and more university for people to go. So there's more places where they can study. So the competition actually now is smaller than, 40 years ago. But yeah, that's not a nice culture. But it's their culture, not mine.
And this video, which I just did a short video on, this is a dad asking his
So you just did a short video.
daughter if Japanese people are bad. And the daughter says they're good. And so the dad does what? Pow, pow. And then forces the daughter to admit that the Japanese are bad people.
现在跟你说，这边人是坏人，是好人还是坏人？你现在说。
那是坏人，我说了是坏人，就是家是坏人。
Between having to fight for the social right.
Wow, imagine that the guy is telling the kid, oh, Japanese are bad, because maybe Japanese invaded China and killed over 20 million Chinese like 75 years ago, and you can find one person that's doing that. So see how they manipulate information, how they manipulate those kind of things, saying, look, this parent, this father is telling the kid Japanese are bad. How many people are doing that in China? Right? And again, this is the government telling him to do it?
rights of your grandparents to getting brutally pressured by your parents into studying to not having a great outcome when you do
It's too easy. Those guys make my job too easy.
graduate from college, which, by the way, usually
Yeah, actually, the guy, I have another channel in Portuguese, the 160,000 subscribers. That's my main channel. I started 5 years ago. Actually, the guys in Brazil, they have better arguments.
is 4 years of not doing much because once you get into college, your study career is practically over, and now it's really up to chance and life. But
When you get into college and you don't, it's just up to chance and life. You don't need to study. Are you really, that's true?
the experience of an average Chinese person is not quite good. But the government will want you to forget about these people's experience, especially this one next, which I found was very bizarre. This woman
Okay.
was filmed consuming rotten and moldy food. She collects
Okay.
rainwater for drinking, and the moon is her light source at night. The vlogger helps her to get some real food, and she says her husband passed away 5 to 6 years ago. Her belly bloating, some believe, is hepatic ascites, which is the accumulation of fluids in the stomach cavity because of liver damage. The reason the CCP doesn't want these videos to spread around is because they don't help with the narrative that China's succeed.
So, okay, her situation is bad. The government should do something to help her and protect her and have a good life. Okay? Everyone agree that. But then he says, oh, the CCP doesn't want you to see this video. Prove us. Because you literally got this video from Chinese internet. So how come? The CCP is this big brother that's overseeing everything and censoring everything, but they somehow let this video go. So now you took this video and you're posting on YouTube?
Succeeding. China is beating the world. You got DeepSeek, right? You got a new
What he's saying, I mean, they put a lot of information together just to create this narrative that, oh, everything China is amazing. And it's not true. Everybody here, people that I work with, talk with, Chinese people, they understand China has problems. The government, for example, the government recognizes there is still poverty here. They're still fighting poverty here. So that's just lies.
new blockbuster movie called Ne Zha 2. You got all of these success
Just a China hater.
in the mainstream that they want not to be overshadowed by the biggest problems in China, which is the fact that this success was built on half of the country being left behind while the other half succeeded. So the CCP
Half of the country was left behind. When? How?
uses this excuse for why the other half is left behind is that things like homelessness, for example, is a complex problem. Well, it is complex because these are deep rooted in the ways that they handle things, but it's also because it's a complex hardship created by varieties of different problems, but fundamentally it really boils down to how the CCP views people. Because they view people as disposable, there's really no sense of mercy or regret when it comes to handling the population that they want to silence, right? What they call is the low-end population. For example, homelessness. Homelessness is in China. It's
Yes.
real, and it
Yes.
happens, yes, of course, around the world in every different country. But
Yes.
in China, they pretend like homeless is not an issue until it happens, like in this video where you see people on the streets of Shenzhen putting up blankets, sleeping on the streets, and then they tell you the excuse, right? It's
Wait. There's a program for homeless people in Guangzhou, a government program to support homeless people in Guangzhou. Guangzhou is a city with 15 million people, close to where I'm living. I'm living in a small city for Chinese standards. Almost 5 million people are living here. I never saw one homeless people. And I'm talking about 4.7, 4.8 million people living here. I've been here for almost 3 years, never saw one homeless people. Never. Because the government has a lot of programs to fight poverty. And these people here, I have no idea what they're doing on the street.
it's a complex problem. And honestly, because China is actually a rotten
And another thing is, how do you know they're homeless? Because in China, they have this culture of sleeping anywhere, especially after lunch.
country. And until you look for it, things
Doesn't mean that's nice, okay? Doesn't mean that's nice.
appear pretty normal. And homelessness is one of the simpler ones that you can kind of pinpoint right away that they usually try to lie about. There's more hidden ones where unless you lived in China for a few years, you probably wouldn't even get to touch in terms of reaching
what?
that side of China. One of them is the way that they're saying how, well, the CCP lifted people out of poverty, right?
They did. And you know who says that? The United States country says that. The Monetary Fund, the Monetary International Fund says that. The World Bank says that. It's not only China, because all those numbers, they were audited.
The people all have jobs now. The people living
Nope.
in the urban area can
China doesn't say that.
get a house, can work a 9 to 5. What actually,
China doesn't say that.
what a lot of people end up having to do in China is that they work in factories.
Yep.
现在不用你上班了，听没听懂？不用这个字儿，
他不用我上班，
不用你上班了，给你结工资，
他那个理由不充足。
够充足了，就这么简单。我觉得你不适应这个岗位。
In this video, which was
So they're firing someone. Wow.
taken on February 1st, a man said that he worked in a factory and wanted to take a day off on the 4th day of the Chinese New Year. Instead of granting that day off, he was laid off right away on the spot. The staff member said your leave request cannot be approved and that they thought he wasn't suitable for the job anymore, so they fired him.
Okay.
Forced to resign. It tells him you can either resign or call the police. He, of course, replied, isn't there a labor law in place to protect him from all
Yes,
this stuff?
there is.
Well, laws really don't apply to everybody in China. And after
There is labor laws in
Of course,
China.
he even received a phone call from the local police asking whether or not he posted a video on TikTok or Douyin in China. And so, as you can see here, the police really do not side with the people. And this man here is
Wait. How do you know that? Because you're not showing us what the police really said. You're not showing us. You're not showing us what happened later. I'll tell a case that I know, because he's bringing one case, right? I'll bring a case that I know from my company. We had games in 2023. We had company games, and an employee hurt her ankle. She twisted her ankle. And then she got fired, not because of the ankle, but it was already on the plan of the company. She sued the company because she said, oh, I hurt my ankle on my working time. And she won. So yes, there is labor laws in China. And again, what he said, oh, in China, the laws don't apply to everyone. Oh, it's only China, right? This never happened in the United States.
protesting 12-hour work days during in his factory.
Yep.
And he later, of course, had his profile deleted and the video was taken down as well.
Yeah, this still happens in China. This is bad. But the government never said that people only work 9 to 5. That's not true. Show us. As I always say, leave a link where the government is saying that people only work 9 to 5. Because everybody who knows China or work with factories in China or have some contact with factories in China knows that people work 12 hours in general. There is some factories already moving to I was speaking Portuguese. Moving to 8 hours per shift, but it still is 12 hours. No, I don't think anyone says the opposite. The government doesn't. And it's also bad. I think people should work less. And I'm in China criticizing the government, right? And nothing happens. Yeah.
A new friend that I had recently met, and by the way, I'll have a video coming out with him, said something which actually greatly summarizes the state of China. He went to China and he says that if you're somebody who wants to live like a sheep, just fall in line and do what you're told, China's a great country because you have great infrastructure and every day, wherever you go, you can have a peaceful, enjoyable life. But
So you are telling me that you can have a great infrastructure and enjoyable life in China. Amazing, right?
if you're somebody who even desires a slimmer of freedom,
Freedom,
or just
like what?
desires to question things, well, China's not for you because once you step out of line a little bit, you get eaten right away. And
So wait. So this guy was a tourist in China because he doesn't live here, as he said. And what kind of freedom do you want? A freedom for what? Because on my Portuguese channel, people are always complaining that, in China you cannot curse the president. Okay, you are not allowed to do that in China because of Confucianism, not because of the Communist part of China. Confucianist societies, they are built on this respect for the leaders and the elderly, so it's not really allowed to do this kind of thing. But let's think it's allowed, okay? Like in the United States is allowed, in Brazil is allowed. What does it change? Does this bring any real change to your life? Like, oh yeah, Putin is this, Biden is that, Trump is that. Like, what does this change? But in the opposite, 90% of the millennials in China have a house. And here in China, you own your house. They don't have like mortgage for like 30 years. So They have cars, they have education. As he said, great infrastructure, enjoyable life, cheap real food. What kind of freedom you're discussing here? Give an example so we can argue that. And again, the guy was a tourist here. I'm living here for 5.5 years.
And that's precisely what happens with ordinary people. They have to live with it because unless they...
Oh, and this thing that you cannot criticize the government, this is just a lie. Because I've been doing that on my Portuguese channel for like 5 years. The government knows my videos because they already contacted me. I've been doing here in English, and like now I can say I disagree that the people should work 12 hours per shift, like 60 hours per week. I think this is wrong. I think China should push the companies to limit that. That's a critic. You can do that. You are allowed to do that. My colleagues, they do that every month. They get together. I work with some party members. They get together just to criticize the government. Nothing happens to them. Nothing happened to me. I still have my working visa. I've been working here for 5 years.
Deal with what they're being, I guess the cards are dealt, or just a situation there, although unfair. Once they try to do something about it, that's when the system starts to eat you up again. So there's no way that they can get out of it by protesting or by attempting to voice their opposition, their opinion.
Examples.
So
China has tons of strikes. So give us an example of what really happens. Give us an example of this person here, or numbers actually, because one case is not a real example of the whole society. So give us numbers, give us data.
Let's talk about the second point here while we're talking about the factory stuff, which is that the apparent success equals personal success. What does that mean? Well, the CCP likes to think that as long as they have done something as a country, well, it also means that you have personally gotten better, right? So you often hear this with online trolls from the CCP. What they say is that, well, China is no longer the China from 30 years ago. China is more advanced today.
Yes.
And that means every Chinese person in China is more prosperous and better off than they were 40 years ago. Well, the truth is...
The last part, I never heard, okay? I'm not saying they never said it, but I never heard this last part.
Individuals are living a different experience, and a lot
They
of
know
times
that?
they're
Yep.
using that 1% success to justify the rest of the 99.9% of failure.
This means 0.01, not 1%. Again, he's just making up numbers because he doesn't have anything, so he's just building a narrative to show, look, China is bad. Based on what? No proofs.
This is, some people may be thinking, well, you know, in the U.S., if you got billionaires, that means everybody else must be successful too, right? But no, billionaires are billionaires, and if you're still making $20,000 a year, you're still making $20,000 a year.
China is the same.
But you would never think that because Elon Musk has billions of dollars, that you are better off today than you were yesterday when he had few millions less, right? That doesn't work like that. But the way they propagandize things is that if somebody in China is successful, that means we're all successful, right? Sure, you got plenty bits of population in the urban cities, especially the biggest cities.
I'm sorry, but I don't know anyone in China who would say, yeah, Jack Ma is multi-billionaire and we are better because of that. Really, I don't know anyone who would say that. But I will say that China has a sense of belonging to something bigger. Chinese people, they have this feeling that they belong to something bigger. So, for example, if our neighborhood, or we see that a lot during the Gaokao. Gaokao is the exam people have to do to join college in China. So they have this test that is very stressful for the kids. In the small village, when some kid goes to one of the most famous universities in China, they have a party. They have parades. Because back in the day, when China was an empire, there was the exams for joining the empire, to work for the empire as a governor employee or something like that. And it means that they would bring prosperity to the village, because they would say, okay, this guy is working for the government, so maybe we'll have more resources to our village and so on and so on. And then this was built centuries ago, this culture. And it still happens today when someone goes to Tsinghua University, Fudan University, Renmin University, big universities in China, famous ones, they still do parade. So they still feel that way. They still feel like, wow, this is good for everyone. Because not only China is like that. Japan, Korea, Vietnam, societies that were built with Confucianist mindset, they have this feeling. Doesn't mean that, okay, this guy is billionaire is good for everyone. I don't know anyone who would say that.
That are doing quite well, but that's in every country. But what happens is half of the country, at least half of the country in China, is still living in a poverty state.
Yeah.
They don't have the proper healthcare systems. They don't have the proper income. And a lot of them are being exploited even today.
He doesn't bring any data, any proofs or nothing. So 40% of Chinese people still lives with 1,000 renminbi per year. That would be $150. 1,000 renminbi per month. That would be around $150 per month. That's very low. And this data is public. Anyone can access that. I know that. So yes, everybody knows. The government's not hiding anything. Yeah, and it's bad. And we know the government is working. We have the poverty alleviation programs to eliminate that. But it's a process, takes time. Will not happen in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. We are talking about 1.4 billion people. It's a lot of people.
Today, which is ironic considering that Karl Marx talked about this whole factory exploitation thing in his book, right? That's the whole point of communism, is that they don't want to be exploited. That's the whole point of this communism talk, right?
Yeah.
Is they don't want to be exploited by the capitalists in the factory. In this video, though, rural workers are traveling to Shanghai at 3 a.m. in the morning looking for jobs. These are day-paid jobs. They work, they get signed up, paid for the day. If they can find any, that is. Many of them don't.
That's bad. Yes. Because you cannot create communism like in 50 years. It doesn't work that way. It's a process. China is in a stage of socialism that they plan to be in a more advanced stage by 2049. But communism will take long time.
我有些好奇的上去询问，原来他们是干零活的工人。
我从来没看到过那么多人，
都是吃不到饭的，走来就饭的。你看，要吃上饭了，你大早醒来这里干嘛？
那一般你比如说一个礼拜大概能找到几天啊？
一般来说，有时候干个4、5天，3、4天。
What happened? The government is censoring me because I'm criticizing the government. It's just my internet here. That happens with the VPN.
一天能够赚多少钱？比如说100、200、300，就大概。
哪里有这么多呀？没有。
听旁边的大哥说，接近年关，好多人都回家了。放在之前，这里的人要比现在多上几倍。
And this female worker in a video in the factory looks very tired, just trying to get her lunch. And the video sparked massive amount of discussions online. People saying things like, oh my God, the female employee looks like a zombie. Look at this woman in the video, a body whose soul was sucked by the assembly line. The factory is the most exploitative, and workers are like machines. They keep working, counting commissions, and fighting for speed.
Again, this only happens in China, right?
It's broken. China's the world's factory. A lot of people are literally living through that exploitation that they so very much talked about in the book by Karl Marx. And the fact that
in the book by Karl Marx, which book we're talking about?
That this is still happening tells you that no matter what happens to the 1% successful in China, or the people who made DeepSeek, right? They're successful. It doesn't mean
one of the guys were from a village, a small village.
That they're personally successful on this end of the country. Because most tourists and people that visit China,
this guy, he's just put up a lot of information together to make up a narrative that doesn't really bring any data. Anything. Oh, it's the only 1% in China is doing well. Show us the proof. There's no proof.
Stay less than 2 weeks, and people that live there for 1 or 2 years, they don't really get to experience this. And so it's very hard for people to say, other than the fact that, but my beautiful city in China, Shanghai, blah, 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 blah. That's how they see, and which is fine. That's why I never tell you don't go visit China. But if you do visit, just know that you're not going to see the full picture until you've lived there for many.
This is for every country, man. Every country. It's not only China. If you go to visit France and you stay in Paris, you only see the nice places in Paris. You will not go to the outskirts of the city. You will not go to the small places like I lived in France. I was living in a city called Thionville in the north. And this is a completely different reality from Paris. I lived in Georgia, United States, for 6 months. It's very, very different from California, where my sister is living. So what you're saying applies for every country. If you stay there for like a month, you are not really seeing the reality of what people is living.
Many years. The thing is, behind the beautiful cities, the skylines, the trains, and the bridges, how long does it take for you to hide behind the packaging until one day it doesn't work anymore? This picture posted online sparked a discussion about the state of China. It's an apple that looks perfectly fine on the outside, but rotten on the inside. It's been released for 76 days. Why are there so many bugs and they rot so?
76 days. And you expect the apple will be fine? Really? Really, guys?
Quickly. Now, 76 is the number of years the CCP has been in power since 1949. This comment says, why do I have to eat the rotten part? This apple has been 5,000 years, right? Meaning the civilization history of China. Only been 70 plus days and so many insects. Again,
Yeah, 70 days. You expect the apple will survive 70 days. Are you crazy?
the year the CCP has been in power. I smell the pesticide, but the seller tells me it's pesticide free. Before cutting it, it seems perfect until the rotten part shows on the surface. You're starting to hide that too. This one says, inside is rotten. They start to color the outside too. Apple is rotten inside, but the outside is fine, so most of us don't realize
How do you expect?
it until it starts to rot on the outside too. Then we realize it's time to grow it.
Really?
And this one says, some say just cut the part that's rotten, but really the whole thing is bad. So many people are starting to realize that fundamentally it's the system that the CCP created that's really wrong. And in order to solve all of their problems, they need a new system, which is why you see less and less foreigners in China. More and more Chinese people want to escape China because
There's less foreigners in China because they don't really need foreigners anymore like they did before. As I mentioned, China has 7 universities on the top 100, and every year they graduate over 2 million engineers. So the foreigners are going to Vietnam, Thailand, Bangladesh, where you can find amazing packages, salaries and benefits like rent, tickets home, and so on. China doesn't need anymore. It means foreigners are moving. That's it.
Because China is a rotten country and people want to get out of it. They have to deal with the complex hardship
Oh, by the way, there's more Americans living in China than Chinese living in the United States.
in the process. But most people understand today, which I think is a good thing, that this is a very deeply rooted problem.
Okay. Another China hater, those guys, they are professional China haters. You see there's no real data. They never post a link of what they're saying, so we can check, you can check, anyone can check and see, okay, yeah, what he's saying makes sense. This source, I can trust on this source. They never do that. They just put a lot of data, a lot of information together. Oh, look at this video that I found on Chinese internet that the government doesn't want you to see. So how did you find it? And that's it. Just more hating.